One of the most iconic images in the history of film is Julie Andrews spinning atop a sunlit meadow, arms outstretched, singing the title number. The sound of music for millions of viewers. That moment represents pure cinematic joy, nature, freedom, and song perfectly joined. Yet behind that breathtaking image was a day of technical chaos, physical discomfort, and even frustration from the locals to capture that sweeping view. The production relied on a helicopter-mounted camera, an unusual and daring technique for the mid-1960s. The cameraman was strapped into the aircraft, flying low and directly toward Andrews as she twirled in the open field. The problem was immediately clear. Helicopters are deafeningly loud. The noise was so overwhelming that Andrews couldn't hear her musical cues to begin singing and spinning. Choreographer Mark Bro had to crouch in the grass with a megaphone, shouting timing instructions over the thunder of the rotors. Each pass of the helicopter brought another challenge. The downdraft from its blades was so strong that it repeatedly knocked Andrews off her feet, sending her sprawling into the grass. She later joked that during the filming, she was constantly spitting dirt and hay, trying to keep her composure while being blown over again and again. It took 6 or 7 full takes to capture a usable shot, and each one ended with Andrews on the ground, laughing and gasping for breath. Nature wasn't entirely cooperative either. The stunning meadow used for the sequence belonged to a farmer who had promised to keep the tall grass uncut for filming. When the crew returned, they discovered the field had been freshly mowed. Desperate to recreate the lush look, the crew improvised. They replanted sections of grass, moved trees, and even built an artificial stream to complete the illusion of untouched beauty. The farmer grew increasingly irritated as the filming dragged on. Helicopters frightened his cattle. Equipment trampled his property. Yet the crew persisted, chasing that perfect moment of cinematic wonder. The result, of course, was pure magic. The image of Andrews spinning amid endless green became the very symbol of the movie, perhaps of musical cinema itself. What audiences saw as spontaneity and ease was, in truth, the product of careful calculation, physical endurance, and a team that refused to settle for less. While The Sound of Music is remembered for its polish and warmth, the production was filled with challenges that demanded resilience. Some of the most memorable sequences came at a cost, not just in time and budget, but in physical injuries to the cast. Charmian Carr, who played Liesl, suffered the worst accident. During the romantic number 16, Going on 17, she danced with Daniel Truhet in a glass-walled gazebo. The floor had been freshly waxed, and near the end of filming, Carr slipped and crashed through a pane of glass. She badly injured her ankle and had to have it bandaged on the spot. Rather than delay the schedule, the crew simply covered her bandages with makeup and adjusted her choreography to disguise the limp. Most viewers never notice that. Liesl is barely putting weight on one leg during parts of the song. Even the gazebo itself became a story. The original structure in Salzburg was too small to accommodate the cameras, so the team built a larger replica on the Fox lot in Los Angeles. It was air-conditioned, brightly lit, and far safer. But the magic of that scene, its romantic glow, hides the fact that it was pieced together from 2 worlds and countless moments of improvisation. Julie Andrews, too, left her own mark on the music. At the end of Do Re Mi, Shay added a soaring high note that wasn't in the score, a playful decision made in the studio because, as she later explained, I could hit it. That small moment became one of the film's musical signatures. Ironically, years later, Andrews would lose her upper range following a failed throat surgery in 1997, making that scene an even more precious piece of her vocal legacy. Editing also reshaped the story. Several film scenes were cut to tighten the pacing, including one where Liesl introduces Rolf to Maria, and another where Captain Von Trapp sings Edelweiss alone in the garden. Director Robert Wise believed that removing these moments kept the story brisk and emotional. The result was a film that feels effortless, though every frame was fought for. Injuries, quick thinking, and tough editorial decisions shaped the masterpiece audiences still adore. When The Sound of Music opened in March 1965, even its creators were unsure how it would be received. The industry was shifting. Grittier, more realistic films were beginning to replace the wholesome musicals of the past. Critics were divided. Some praised its warmth and optimism, while others dismissed it as overly sentimental. Yet audiences had the final word. Within 4 weeks, the film had climbed to #1 at the box office. And it simply refused to leave. By 1966, it had surpassed Gone with the Wind to become the highest-grossing film of all time, holding that record for 5 years. More than 283 million tickets were sold worldwide. Its original theatrical run and 2 major re-releases earned nearly $300 million, staggering numbers for a musical of that era. It broke attendance records in 29 countries and, in some cities, remained on screen for 4.5 years. What powered that success wasn't just the breathtaking scenery or the unforgettable melodies. It was the story's emotional clarity, its perfect blend of romance, humor, and moral courage. Julie Andrews' radiance and crystalline vocals anchored the film's heart, while Christopher Plummer's controlled intensity added balance and tension. Families returned again and again. Children delighted in the Von Trapp kids. Parents found comfort in Maria's optimism and the captain's transformation. For many, seeing the movie became a ritual, a shared experience that offered hope, nostalgia, and escape. In an era shadowed by war and cultural change, The Sound of Music reminded audiences of kindness, courage, and love's quiet power. Over the years, the film's impact only deepened. Its songs filled airwaves, its locations became tourist landmarks, and its imagery became a kind of visual shorthand for joy and freedom. The film was more than a hit. It was a phenomenon that outlived its moment. Casting Maria Von Trapp was the film's greatest gamble. Screenwriter Ernest Lehman believed only Julie Andrews could play her, bringing humor, warmth, and an honest sense of strength. But in 1964, Andrews was not yet a star. Mary Poppins had been filmed, but not released, and she was known mainly for her stage roles in My Fair Lady and Camelot. Hollywood executives hesitated. Jack Warner had already rejected Andrews for the film version of My Fair Lady, claiming she wasn't photogenic enough. The studio compiled lists of safer, more established names: Doris Day, Grace Kelly, Shirley Jones, Anne Bancroft. Even Leslie Caron. Each was talented. But none captured the sincerity Lehman envisioned. Director Robert Wise had a secret advantage. He'd seen early footage from Mary Poppins and instantly recognized Andrews' potential. He rushed to sign her before other studios caught on. Andrews accepted for $225,000, a respectable sum, but without profit sharing, something she would later command easily as one of Hollywood's top earners. Andrews was thoughtful about the role. Her first question to Wise was, "How are you going to get all the sugar out of this picture?" She feared the story could become too sentimental. Wise reassured her, and her natural wit kept the performance grounded. The result was pitch-perfect, joyful, mischievous, and sincere. What might have been saccharine became timeless, and a risk turned into legend. If Andrews was eager to play Maria, Christopher Plummer was almost the opposite. When first offered the part of Captain Georg von Trapp, he was reluctant. He described the character as a cardboard cutout of an authoritarian father. To him, the role lacked complexity, and he nearly turned it down. The studio considered several alternatives: Sean Connery, Richard Burton, Bing Crosby, Yul Brynner, but none seemed right. Plummer, despite his doubts, had the elegance and gravitas the role required. Still, He agreed only after pushing for major script changes. He wrote directly to screenwriter Ernest Lehman, asking for the captain to be reimagined as a man with depth, humor, and vulnerability. His suggestions were surprisingly detailed. He wanted moments of warmth, hints of charm, and a gradual transformation inspired by Maria. Wise and Lehman listened. They reshaped key scenes, giving Von Trapp a human arc rather than a single-note sternness. Plummer eventually agreed to stay, even suggesting musical moments that would reveal the captain's inner struggle. Though he often joked about calling the movie The Sound of Mucus, his performance became one of its most enduring strengths, a portrayal that turned resistance into artistry. Filming in Salzburg and Bavaria was supposed to be ideal, but nature had other plans. The production was plagued by relentless rain. Many of the film's sunlit sequences were actually shot in rare, fleeting moments of clear sky. Scenes like Liesel climbing through Maria's window had to be reshot endlessly due to rain, continuity errors, and malfunctioning lights. Charmian Carr endured icy sprays of water from a rig nicknamed Mr. Rainstorm, which kept her drenched between takes. The freezing conditions left her trembling and exhausted. Even transporting equipment through the muddy mountain terrain became impossible. Cameras, lights, and props had to be hauled on ox carts. Robert Wise recalled watching Julie Andrews wrapped in a fur coat, sitting in one of those carts, patiently waiting to film the iconic hilltop shot. Every delay added pressure, but the spirit on set remained remarkably light. Somehow, amid cold, mud, and endless takes, the cast found laughter. That laughter reached its peak during the filming of Maria and the captain's first kiss, one of the film's most romantic moments. In reality, it was chaos. The giant arc lights used to create the soft, moonlit effect emitted a strange, rumbling sound that resembled a deep raspberry. Every time Andrews and Plummer leaned in to kiss, the lights would growl, and both would break into uncontrollable laughter. Take after take was ruined. The crew, equally amused, only made things worse. Director Robert Wise grew exasperated. Time was money, and 12 failed takes of a kiss were costly. Finally, he changed the lighting setup, shooting the scene in partial darkness to mask both the sound and the actors' giggles. What audiences see as serene intimacy is, in fact, a masterful illusion created out of sheer persistence and laughter. And that's the story behind the perfect imperfection of The Sound of Music, a film built from mistakes, improvisation, and determination. Every detail that went wrong somehow made the finished product feel more alive. Like Maria herself, the film turned chaos into harmony, and nearly 60 years later, the hills are still alive because of it. An elegantly frozen kiss once marked the promise of an engagement between Maria and the captain. It looked effortless on screen, two souls meeting in quiet grace, but for those behind the camera, the memory was far from romantic. What the audience never saw were the hours of suppressed laughter, the awkward retakes that stretched into the night, and the hum of arc lights that flickered and misbehaved like restless spirits in the studio air. The illusion of perfection required endless imperfection. Among the film's most beloved moments lay one of its most deceptive, the sparkling lake sequence where Maria and the children tumble out of a rowboat, laughing as the Austrian sunlight dances on the surface of the water. It was one of the most playful scenes in The Sound of Music, yet also one of the most dangerous. On screen, the lake glows like crystal, and the laughter rings true. But beneath that cheerful surface lurked a genuine moment of fear, one that would haunt the memory of everyone who witnessed it. The scene required 4 takes. Each time, the small boat had to tip over in what appeared to be spontaneous chaos. Yet every movement had to be calculated, rehearsed, and perfectly timed. There was one major complication. The youngest cast member, Kim Kareth Littell Gretel, could not swim. Julie Andrews had been carefully instructed to fall forward into the water. So she would surface near Kareth and pull her to safety the instant they hit the lake. But film sets have their own logic, and chaos tends to find its way in. When the moment came, Andrews lost her balance in the wrong direction. Instead of plunging forward, she toppled backward, away from the struggling child. For a tense heartbeat, no one breathed. The cameras kept rolling, but beneath the surface, the smallest Von Trapp was floundering, her head dipping under the cold water again and again. Crew members leaped into action. Heather Menzies, who played Louisa, rushed forward and managed to reach the panicking child. If you look closely, you can see her in the final cut, holding Gretel and helping her back toward the safety of the shore. Andrews would later speak of that day with lingering guilt. In interviews years later, she confessed that the memory left her shaken, that for a brief, dreadful instant, she feared tragedy might strike a film meant to celebrate innocence and joy. Yet she also praised young Kim Kareth's courage. Though frightened, the little actress returned to the water and finished the sequence without complaint. The footage that survived the day was raw, authentic, and alive with an unplanned energy. What was nearly disaster became one of the film's most iconic images, proof that even accidents can lend truth to art. The lake, however, was unforgiving. Its water was far colder than it looked, and each dunking took its toll. The costumes, heavy with fabric, soaked up the chill until the children could hardly move. Safety divers hovered just out of frame, and the crew kept towels and blankets ready, but fatigue set in quickly. Even in laughter, there was exhaustion in their eyes. The beauty of the scene came at a price none of them would forget. Elsewhere, joy found its own rhythm. Few moments in the movie captured the warmth between Maria and the children, like the bicycle sequence during Dormy. It looks effortless, a breezy montage of laughter and music. Children riding through the heart of Salzburg as the camera glides beside them. But behind that effortless charm was an astonishing amount of work. The sequence took months of preparation, weeks of rehearsals on the 20th Century Fox lot in Los Angeles. Long before anyone set foot in Austria, choreographers Mark Bro and D.D. Wood, working from precise storyboards drawn by Morris Subarano, plotted every movement like a dance. When to pedal, when to stop, when to smile. Each turn of the handlebars had to match the rhythm of the song. What audiences would later take as spontaneous joy was, in fact, a perfect illusion of freedom, a result of control so delicate that it looked like none at all. By the time filming began in Salzburg, the children moved in perfect unison, and Andrews could lead them through the narrow streets as though they were one living melody. Then came the puppet show, The Lonely Goatherd, a moment of sheer whimsy that remains one of the film's most endearing sequences. But whimsy required precision. Legendary capotis. Bill and Cora Baird created the elaborate marionettes, their faces carved with detail only the camera could truly capture. For weeks, Andrews and the children practiced every motion, pretending to pull the strings while hidden technicians guided the real puppets above them. Each nod, each kick, each tiny bounce had to synchronize with the music. When the cameras rolled, the illusion was flawless. The children looked as though they were performing it all themselves. Small miracle of timing and teamwork that brought fantasy to life. As filming continued, time itself became another invisible challenge. The young actors were growing literally. Nicholas Hammond, who played Friedrich, shot up nearly 6 inches during production. At one point, standing taller than Charmian Carr, who played Liesel. To maintain continuity, Carr often had to stand on boxes to preserve the illusion of height. Debbie Turner, who played Marta, lost her 2 front teeth during filming, prompting the props team to create tiny dental replacements so her smile would stay consistent between shots. The children, in their innocence, carried on with unshakable good humor, encouraged by Andrews's warmth and the sense of family that had formed among them. Continuity, however, became its own battlefield. Every movie depends on seamless flow objects, gestures, and positions aligning perfectly across countless takes. But in The Sound of Music, small inconsistencies slipped through like ghosts between frames. When Liesl climbs through Maria's window after meeting Rolf in the rain, she first stands squarely in the middle of the bed, then somehow appears on the side only to return to the center as the angle changes. The impossible dance of camera cuts went unnoticed by most, but once seen, it cannot be unseen. Even the captain fell victim to continuity quirks. In one scene, furious at discovering the children's play clothes made from drapes, he throws a piece of fabric to the floor. Yet, when the camera returns, the cloth has mysteriously vanished. In another, as he prepares to sing Edelweiss, he holds a glass in his right hand, then suddenly, in the next shot, it's in his left. The seamless illusion of time bends quietly beneath the editor's blade. The outdoor scenes, shot amid the breathtaking vistas of Salzburg, carried their own peculiarities. During a carriage ride, the family passes a beauty salon marked Freezer. Moments later, the same storefront appears again from a different angle, giving the uncanny impression that the carriage is circling the same street twice. The Doremi montage hides similar secrets, hair flying wildly in one moment, perfectly arranged in the next. Evidence that shots filmed days apart were later woven together as if they were one continuous performance. The lake scene again betrays its chaos when seen frame by frame. Louisa on the left in one shot, suddenly on the right holding Gretel in the next. These small glitches are like fingerprints left by the editing process. Reminders that cinema's magic lies not in reality, but in its careful construction. The film's editors faced an immense challenge, stitching musical numbers together from dozens of takes, often filmed across different days, lighting conditions, and moods. Even with careful planning, movement changes were unavoidable. In the scene where the children sing for the Baroness, Liesl begins lowering her guitar butt by the next shot. It's already resting against her knee. The subtle jump passes unnoticed beneath the melody, yet once spotted, it exposes the hidden rhythm of movie making. Later, at the Salzburg Folk Festival, the Von Trapp children's positions shift almost imperceptibly between camera angles. Gretel stands before Kurt, then suddenly finds herself between Louisa and Kurt as the frame changes. Christopher Plummer, too, experiences the same visual trickery. During Edelweiss, he begins seated squarely at the center of the couch, but in the next instant he appears at its edge without any visible movement. The illusion is continuous sound, disguising discontinuous time. Occasionally, the editor's cuts doubled back on themselves. After the nuns finish singing, how do you solve a problem like Maria? One gently escorts Maria to Mother Abbess's office, resting a hand on her shoulder and saying, "You can go in now." Moments later, from another camera angle, the same gesture and line repeated tiny, left behind in the film's final form. Casting the movie had been its own saga of near misses and chance alignments. Finding Liesl, the sweet and spirited eldest daughter, proved unexpectedly difficult. Dozens of rising young stars auditioned. Among them, Mia Farrow, Patty Duke, Kurt Russell, and Terry Garr. Farrow was tested 3 separate times and impressed director Robert Wise with her ethereal charm. But her dancing lacked strength, and her energy on screen felt too delicate. Eventually, the part went to Charmian Carr, whose combination of poise, innocence, and vitality proved perfect. Even Julie Andrews, though already luminous from Mary Poppins, faced transformation. The studio wanted Maria to appear blonde lighter, more angelic. The first attempt at dyeing her naturally brown hair went horribly wrong, turning it a bright orange. Only after several corrections did it settle into the golden hue audiences remember. Daniel Truhitt, who played Rolf, endured a similar fate. His hair was bleached so intensely that it suffered permanent damage, thinning noticeably after production wrapped, Stunts added their own complications. Though the children performed most of their own scenes, Andrews required a double for one dangerous moment, when Maria swings from a tree branch as the captain's car approaches. Her stand-in, Larry Thomas, had worked with her on Mary Poppins, handling some of the airborne sequences there as well. It was another quiet link between two of cinema's most iconic musicals. In the end, the cast that audiences came to love seemed destined by fate itself. It's hard to imagine anyone else in those roles, the chemistry too genuine, the harmony too effortless. Yet the path to that perfection was paved with uncertainty, with hundreds of auditions, false starts, and lucky breaks. For all its polish, The Sound of Music was not immune to small human mistakes that somehow survived the editor's scissors. Some were technical, others simply curious. During the family's escape sequence at the Abbey, the Von Trapps are shown hiding behind headstones pressed flat against a wall, an impossibility if one looks closely. Yet the tension of the moment conceals the absurdity. In the cozy bedroom scene where Maria comforts the children with my favorite things, little Marta can be seen mouthing the words even when she's not supposed to be singing, lost in the rhythm of the song. At the end of Doremi, Kurt continues lip-syncing after the music has stopped, his joy spilling past the bounds of the performance. Props, too, betrayed anachronisms invisible to the untrained eye. When the family flees in their car, a quick shot of the vehicle's underside reveals Michelin X radial tires, products of 1948. Though the story is set a full decade earlier. And in one quiet exchange between Captain Von Trapp and Max, the sound department left behind a tiny ghost of error. The captain taps Max on the cheek twice, but three distinct tapping sounds echo on the track. Individually, these mistakes are trifles. Collectively, they form a secret history beneath the movie's flawless surfaces, mosaic of human hands and hurried choices that remind us how art is made. What began as fragments of imperfection became the masterpiece millions would cherish for generations. When the lights dim and the opening chords swell, few think of the cold lake, the trembling child, or the laughter between takes. But those moments are woven into the film's soul, invisible yet essential. They remind us that The Sound of Music is not merely a story of songs and mountains, it is the story of the people who made it. Their breath, their courage, their mistakes, and their joy captured forever in the flicker of light on celluloid.